When you walk into a city today and hear voices saying, "It's falling apart. Immigrants are the reason. They're the ones draining resources." It's easy to buy into that surface-level story. Fear is loud. Fear spreads fast, but the truth is often quieter, working behind the scenes, shaping a different reality than the one headlines scream at us. What we often call collapse is, in many cases, nothing more than change. Change that feels uncomfortable. Change that challenges old ways of life. Change that forces us to adapt. And when change arrives wrapped in unfamiliar accents, new foods, and different cultural traditions, some people confuse that change with chaos. They mistake evolution for erosion, but look deeper. Peel back the layers of noise, and you'll see a different picture emerge. You'll see doctors filling hospitals that would otherwise be understaffed. You'll see engineers building the technology that powers the devices we use every single day. You'll see small business owners revitalizing neighborhoods that once stood abandoned, turning empty streets into thriving communities. The narrative of collapse comes from focusing on loss. The jobs lost to automation, the businesses lost to outdated systems, the tax dollars lost to mismanagement. None of that comes from the presence of immigrants. That's the mistake in perception. The pain people feel is real, but the blame is misplaced. Because the real story is that immigrants are not the weight dragging cities down, they're the muscle lifting cities up. Think about it. When an Indian entrepreneur launches a startup in Silicon Valley that employs hundreds of Americans, is that collapse? When an immigrant family opens a corner store in a struggling neighborhood, providing both goods and jobs, is that collapse? When immigrant students graduate at the top of their class and fuel the next wave of scientific breakthroughs, is that collapse, or is it the very definition of contribution? The lens you choose to look through shapes the story you tell. One lens magnifies fear, scarcity, and division. The other lens magnifies growth, resilience, and opportunity. And if we want to know the real health of our cities, we've got to stop looking at them through the lens of collapse and start recognizing the contributions happening every single day. This is not about denying the challenges. Yes, housing prices are high. Yes, competition is fierce. Yes, systems feel strained. But blaming those challenges on immigrants is like blaming the rain for the cracks in your roof. The cracks were already there. The rain just revealed them. The real work is to strengthen the roof, modernize the system, and channel the energy of new communities into progress. Because where some see collapse, others see rebirth. And the difference between those two visions, it's not the immigrants, it's the perspective. When people look at the challenges in cities today, they often search for someone to blame. It's human nature. When something feels broken, we want a target. And immigrants often become that target. But if you strip away the noise and the fear, what you actually see is a pattern of creation, not destruction. The fingerprints of immigrants aren't on the ruins. They're on the foundations being rebuilt. Walk into the medical field, across hospitals in America, who is showing up for the late night shifts, who is stepping into critical roles when shortages threaten patient care. Look at the names of the doctors, the researchers, the innovators behind the medicine that saves lives. A huge percentage of them are immigrants, standing on the front lines, not tearing systems down but holding them up. Shift to technology. Some of the most transformative companies, the ones changing how we communicate, shop, and live, were built by immigrants. The apps you use daily, the software that drives your business, the artificial intelligence reshaping industries. These innovations come from people who came here with nothing but ambition, vision, and relentless drive. They didn't break the system, they expanded it. They created jobs, industries, and wealth that ripple far beyond their own communities. And let's not forget small businesses. The corner grocery store, the family-run restaurant, the dry cleaner, the taxi service. These are not signs of collapse. They are lifelines of neighborhoods. They provide services where none existed. They employ locals who might otherwise struggle for work, and they transform forgotten streets into thriving hubs. The story of every immigrant-owned business is not one of taking away, but of adding, building, multiplying. Think about education. Walk into top universities and you'll see immigrant students leading research, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in science, engineering, and medicine. Their pursuit of excellence doesn't just raise their own families. It raises the bar for everyone. It brings competition, yes, but competition that drives innovation, excellence, and progress. The idea that immigrants are somehow breaking cities is rooted in fear, but fear is often blind to the evidence in front of us. The skyscrapers rising in city skylines, the new industries emerging from the ground, the cultural richness that makes cities vibrant. All of this carries the imprint of immigrant energy. If immigrants were breakers, we'd see ruins. Instead, we see expansion, we see growth, we see the infusion of new ideas, new businesses, and new life. The truth is, the people being labeled as the problem are in reality the problem solvers. They are patching the cracks in old systems, finding ways to reinvent failing structures, and injecting resilience into economies that might otherwise stagnate. When history looks back, it won't tell a story of collapse caused by outsiders. It will tell a story of how new waves of people arrived, not to dismantle what existed, but to strengthen, rebuild, and elevate it into something stronger than before. Every generation inherits systems that were built decades, sometimes centuries before. Roads, schools, governments, industries. These are the structures we live inside of. And here's the truth. Those systems were not designed for the realities we face today. They were built for smaller populations, slower communication, and an economy that looked nothing like the one we have now. So when fresh energy pours into those outdated systems, sparks fly. Immigrants are not the collapse. They're the catalyst. They bring new ideas, new rhythms, new ways of solving problems. But when those ideas collide with rigid institutions, it feels like chaos. It feels like the system is breaking. In reality, the system isn't being broken. It's being exposed. The cracks were already there, waiting for the pressure to reveal them. Take the economy. Factories once dominated America's cities, providing stable jobs for millions. But automation, globalization, and outdated education pipelines have eroded that foundation. Immigrants arrive with skills and entrepreneurial fire, ready to fill the gaps and create new opportunities. Yet instead of embracing the shift, many people blame them for the loss of jobs. The truth is, those jobs were disappearing long before newcomers set foot here. What immigrants are doing is igniting industries that never existed before. Or look at housing. Cities were designed decades ago with zoning laws and infrastructure for a very different time. Populations grew, but policies didn't keep pace. When immigrant families move into these neighborhoods, demand spikes, and suddenly the system feels overloaded. But it isn't the families that created the shortage. It's the inability of outdated housing policies to evolve. The collapse we're seeing is not caused by new energy entering the system. It's caused by the refusal of the system to modernize. And let's not ignore culture. Institutions often resist change because change is uncomfortable. When you walk into a city and hear new languages on the street, taste new foods, or see new traditions celebrated, some people feel disoriented. But that disorientation isn't destruction, it's expansion. It's the system of identity clashing with the energy of diversity. That clash is not a threat. It's an opportunity to grow, to adapt, to become more resilient. Think about technology. The old system of slow bureaucracies and manual processes collides with the fast-paced digital first mind that immigrants often bring from global hubs. What happens? Friction. But in that friction, sparks of innovation light up. Companies transform, cities adapt, and new models emerge. So, when people say cities are collapsing, What they're really describing is a system too slow to keep up with the energy rushing into it. Immigrants aren't tearing down. They're forcing the outdated to evolve. They're the pressure test that reveals whether we're willing to grow or destined to decay. And here's the choice. We can cling to the comfort of old structures and call progress collapse. Or we can harness the energy of change and build systems strong enough to handle the future. Because history is clear, those who resist new energy fall behind. Those who embrace it rise. One of the loudest fears echoing through cities today is this: immigrants are taking our jobs. It's a phrase you'll hear in conversations, in politics, in the media. But let's stop for a moment and ask, is that fear grounded in fact? Or is it a story we've repeated so often that it feels like truth? If you zoom out and really look at the evidence, you'll see something different. Immigrants don't just fill jobs, they create them. They don't just enter existing systems, they design new ones. They're not a drain on the economy, they are fuel for it. Consider the world of entrepreneurship. Some of the fastest growing businesses in America were started by immigrants. Tech giants, medical innovations, restaurant chains, retail outlets. Countless success stories began with someone who came here with a dream and turned it into reality. And every time one of those businesses takes off, it doesn't just employ the founder's family. It employs dozens, hundreds, sometimes thousands of Americans. What some see as competition is actually expansion. Think about the local level. A family opens a food truck. At first, it's just them running the business. But as it grows, they hire 2 employees, then 10, then 20. They start sourcing ingredients from local suppliers. Suddenly, the ripple spreads. Jobs are being created not just directly, but indirectly. Through the supply chain, through partnerships, through demand. That's not taking away, that's multiplying. Now, let's look at innovation. When a new idea enters the economy, it doesn't eliminate opportunities. It sparks them. The invention of the smartphone created millions of jobs that never existed before. App developers, digital marketers, ride-share drivers. Immigrants have been at the center of this wave of innovation, not closing doors but opening entire industries, even in fields like medicine, engineering, and education, where the fear of competition is strongest. Immigrants are expanding capacity. When a hospital recruits doctors from abroad to fill shortages, they're not displacing American workers. They're preventing burnout, saving lives, and allowing that hospital to serve more patients. When a university attracts international talent, it raises the bar for research, drawing in more funding and opportunities that benefit everyone. The story of job competition is built on a mindset of scarcity, the belief that opportunities are limited, that for one person to win, another must lose. But the story of reality is built on abundance. When new energy enters, the pie doesn't shrink, it grows. And history proves it. Every wave of immigration has eventually led to waves of prosperity. So here's the real shift. It's not about who is taking jobs. It's about who is creating the future. And when you study the patterns, you see clearly, immigrants are builders of industries, pioneers of new markets, and engines of growth. The challenge isn't to fear their presence. The challenge is to harness their drive, collaborate with their vision, and recognize that job creation, not competition, is the force shaping tomorrow's cities. When different worlds meet, something extraordinary happens. It can feel uncomfortable at first, even chaotic, but in that collision lies the birth of something far greater than the sum of its parts. Cities thrive when cultures collide, not when they stay isolated. That blending, the exchange of ideas, traditions, and perspectives, creates a force that fuels innovation, creativity, and growth on every level. Walk through any major American city and pay attention. The music you hear, the food you taste, the technology you use, even the language you speak, it's all shaped by this mixing. A neighborhood block can carry the flavors of 10 different nations. A single office can hold minds from 5 different continents. That is not a sign of collapse. That is the engine of vitality. Look at the culinary world. Dishes that were once considered foreign are now staples of American life. Pizza, tacos, sushi, curry. And today, immigrant entrepreneurs are taking it even further, blending flavors in ways never imagined before. This isn't just food. It's creativity that creates jobs, drives tourism, and brings communities together. The dinner table becomes a place of innovation, and the restaurant down the street becomes a hub of economic life. Now consider technology and business. When people from different backgrounds collaborate, they bring unique problem-solving skills. An engineer from India may look at a challenge differently than an engineer from Chicago. A businesswoman from Mumbai may spot opportunities an executive from New York overlooks. Put them in the same room, and solutions appear that neither could have created alone. That's the gift of fusion. Perspective expands, and with it, possibility. Even in the arts, this blending sparks revolutions. Think about the music scene: hip-hop mixed with Bollywood beats, or jazz blended with classical Indian instruments. New genres are born, attracting global audiences and generating entire industries around them. That's not destruction of culture. It's the evolution of culture. Some resist this fusion because it feels like the loss of identity. But identity isn't lost. It's expanded. It's like adding new instruments to an orchestra. The old ones don't disappear. They find new harmonies, and those harmonies create music that resonates deeper, wider, stronger. On a human level, cultural blending builds resilience. When children grow up in diverse environments, they don't just learn tolerance. They learn adaptability. They become fluent in multiple perspectives. That makes them stronger leaders, better problem solvers, and more prepared for the interconnected world we live in. So when people claim that diversity dilutes cities, they're missing the truth. It doesn't dilute, it multiplies. It takes the creativity of one group, the resourcefulness of another, and the traditions of a third, and forges them into a new reality that none could have achieved alone. The real power of a city is measured not by how well it resists change, but by how boldly it embraces it. And in that embrace, in that fusion, lies the strength, the beauty, and the unstoppable momentum of progress. Everywhere you look, people are saying the system is falling apart. Cities are collapsing. Nothing works anymore. And on the surface, it can feel true. Streets are crowded. Infrastructure is strained. Housing feels impossible. And communities are shifting faster than people can keep up. But what if what we're calling collapse is not an ending at all, but a beginning? What if what looks like breakdown is actually the raw material of breakthrough? History shows us this pattern again and again. The Industrial Revolution once terrified people. Machines were replacing manual labor, families were uprooted from farms to cities, and old traditions were shattered. Many called it collapse, but in hindsight, we recognize it as one of the greatest transformations in human history, laying the foundation for modern life. The discomfort of that era wasn't death, it was birth. The same is true today. Immigration, technology, cultural shifts. These are forces pushing against outdated systems. And when outdated systems resist, it feels like destruction. Schools struggle to adapt, housing policies lag behind demand, and infrastructure strains under the weight of growth. But these cracks don't mean the foundation is gone. They mean it's time to rebuild stronger. Think about nature. A forest fire looks like devastation. The trees burn, the ground blackens, and everything seems lost. But what happens next? The soil is enriched. Seeds that could never grow before now have space to sprout. New life emerges stronger, more resilient. What appeared to be collapse was actually transformation in disguise. Cities are experiencing their own version of this cycle. Old industries are fading, but new ones are being born. Outdated systems are crumbling, but they're making room for modern solutions. Where people see decay, visionaries see possibility. The entrepreneur who turns a deserted warehouse into a startup hub doesn't see collapse. He sees opportunity. The immigrant family that reinvents a failing business doesn't see ruin. They see a chance to rebuild. And that's the choice every society faces in moments of disruption. You can stand in the rubble and mourn what's gone, or you can pick up the pieces and create something better. Transformation is uncomfortable because it requires letting go of what was familiar. But comfort never built great cities. Challenge did, disruption did, transformation did. So the question is not, are we collapsing? The real question is, are we willing to see beyond the surface? Are we willing to look at the friction, the change, the discomfort, and recognize it as the signal that something bigger, something stronger, something more resilient is being born? Because what some label collapse is often just the noise of old walls falling down so that new doors can open. And in that noise, in that discomfort, lies the greatest opportunity of all. The chance to build a future that isn't a repeat of the past, but a reinvention of it.